I'm Brandy.
And hey, I'm Paige.
We're the hosts of this thing.
Spectacular Specimens.
This is a show where Paige and I take turns showing each other
And you.
some pretty impressive specimens.
It's a collection of dead animals.
Right. From Seattle's Burke Museum of Natural History and Culture. And today's specimens are the bullies of the bird world. Paige, what do you know about hummingbirds?
They're very small, very fast. They seem like sweet, delicate little birds that love frolicking through the garden.
Yeah, that's a really nice description of hummingbirds. But did you know that this small, delicate, beautiful bird is stirring up tiny little brawls and sometimes fighting to the death?
Geez, what?
Don't be fooled by their tiny and delicate appearance. A lot of hummingbirds are jerks, to be honest. Yeah.
Hummingbirds need flower nectar to survive, and so some very fierce fighting hummingbirds have adapted to be great fighters in these floral nectar battles.
Live from the garden, it's the Nectar Games.
Live from the Nectar Games gardens where flowers bloom in endless waves, honeysuckles, petunias, and zinnias as far as you can smell. We've got the garden gladiator here, the bird, the myth, the legend, Vincent the Violet Vengeance. In the Nectar Gardens, this champion, Vincent has defended his flower empire from all others. So far, he's flown uncontested, and I don't blame the competitors, Paige. His beak literally strikes fear.
Whew, okay. Do hummingbirds really fight that much?
Oh, yes. Hummingbirds like Vincent fight all the time. And sometimes hummingbird fights look like these standoffs.
Where hummingbirds will be flapping their wings and staring at each other and flying up in the air together, both trying to intimidate each other.
But other times the fights are an all-out brawl or a battle.
Maybe like a gladiator's pit.
That is brutal.
Yeah. My name is Alyssa Sargent, and I study hummingbird combat.
Whoa, so hummingbirds fight so much that someone literally studies their combat?
Oh, yeah. Alyssa is an ornithologist. Ornithology is the study of birds. Alyssa zooms in on hummingbirds from almost every angle you can think of. Not just combat, but their behavior, adaptations, their personalities.
With hummingbirds, the personality tends to be aggressive.
But do hummingbirds really fight to the death like gladiators did in ancient Rome?
Okay, imagine this. Vincent the Violet Vengeance. He enters this huge amphitheater, an arena filled with thousands of hummingbirds watching from above. He locks eyes with his opponent, another hummingbird gladiator, Zippy the Zinnia Zapper. Zippy is known for her speed, but Vincent comes from generations of fighters. His family is known for their intense weapons, their swords. Each hummingbird...
Excuse me, swords? I thought we were talking about birds.
We're still talking about birds.
Hummingbirds do use their beaks like swords. They have a beak that is really, really sharp. It's dagger-like, so they use them to essentially stab each other.
These gladiating hummingbirds fight with such ferocity, and they are literally using their slender and pointed beaks as weapons. Some beaks are even better in fights than others.
Better? How much better can one beak be over another?
Well, hummingbird beaks come in all shapes and sizes. Sharp, hooked, serrated.
Serrated?
If you think about a knife and how it's got those little tiny jagged edges.
Take the shiny green tooth-billed hummingbird, for instance. This hummingbird has jagged edges on its beak and a little curved hook at the very tip of it.
Hummingbirds sometimes have those on their beaks as well, and they can use that to more effectively grab each other and pluck out feathers.
Wait a minute. Their beaks can be knife-like to grab each other and then what?
Pluck their opponent's feathers out.
Sometimes if you'll see a hummingbird with a bunch of feathers in its beak, it's because it just attacked another hummingbird.
The variations in beaks that we see in hummingbirds, the jagged edges, the hooks at the end, the length, are also called adaptations. And it's not just their beaks.
Some of them have these really spiky crest feathers on their heads, which make them look like they have mohawks. Some of them have really, really long tails. Some of them have beaks longer than the length of their body.
An adaptation can help hummingbirds survive all kinds of environments. Rainforests, deserts.
The nectar gardens! But what kind of environment do they need a mohawk for?
Well, for at least two reasons. First, chicks dig a bird with a mohawk. And Paige, it's a great battle strategy. Really known as a crest, this mohawk is one of many feather styles that hummingbirds can control. They can hide their mohawk to conceal themselves or burst it up to intimidate other birds.
Never underestimate the power of a good hairstyle.
I know that's right. Ultimately, all of these adaptations help hummingbirds survive. Every hummingbird has a different tactic. Some may adapt to fly faster or longer.
Hummingbirds that are better at flying long distances are able to visit flowers that are further apart.
But others adapt to be powerful combatants.
Hummingbirds that are better at combat are going to be able to fend off other hummingbirds better from their flowers that they want to visit all by themselves.
Okay, so hummingbirds visit hundreds of flowers a day to sip up lots and lots and lots of flower nectar, and a few spiders.
They eat spiders?
Well, some female hummingbirds occasionally eat tiny spiders for extra protein, but typically hummingbirds run on sugar water. They need to eat 2 to 3 times their weight in food every day to survive.
Whoa, big sugar rush.
Right? They also move incredibly fast and need a lot of flower fuel to keep up with themselves. But flowers are small and may only have so much nectar at a time. And this is where beak adaptation comes in handy.
That's some kind of euphemism for gladiator arena-style takedown, isn't it?
It is indeed.
Hummingbirds really do evolve over time and adapt to essentially outcompete one another.
Oh, and that's why Vincent is the top bird of the garden. I bet no one has out-adapted him.
Well...
Uh-oh.
Okay, Vincent the Violet Vengeance has a great reputation. He definitely dominated the floral arena at one point, but this one morning, he was head-to-head against Zippy the Zinnia Zapper. She's this young, up-and-coming gladiator, and she has a regular beak, by the way.
Folks, we're looking at a classic matchup. A rookie with no jagged or serrated edges, no hooks on her beak. Looks like the Violet Vengeance could be picking up an easy win here, Brandy.
Don't count the rookie out, Paige. Zippy may not have the hardware, but she's got speed. Almost lightning fast, she's gonna give Vincent a run for his nectar. Vincent smirks, the two soar up into the sky, the glare of sun bouncing off their ultra-colored armor. It's a really marvelous view, two birds gleaming in the sun. They draw their swords, and Vincent rushes to jab, and Zippy flies out of the way.
Woo-wee, folks! I wish you could see this one at home. Seems like our friend Zippin disappeared.
In a shocking turn of events, Vincent the Violet Vengeance, our 10-time gladiator champion, narrowly wins this round. Actually, Paige, the champion appeared kind of tired.
I'm playing it back, and you can see he's trying to push through, but energy is fading.
Heavy is the bird that wields the sword.
That's not the saying.
Well, you know what they say, float like a butterfly, sting like a hummingbird?
That's not it either.
Well, maybe they're not saying any of those things, but the point is scientists are saying hummingbirds are losing steam.
Like, we'll see one hummingbird just sitting at a feeder, and they'll chase off other hummingbirds all day. And they do it sometimes so much that you just think, this is not a good use of your time. Like, you could just share the food, and then you wouldn't have to waste so much energy chasing other birds off.
The ornithology team at the Burke is trying to figure out why a great gladiator hummingbird like Vincent, who's adapted to dominate fights, is barely winning them. Coming up, will power still triumph over speed? We'll flock to the experts at the Burke to get the play-by-play after the break. And we're back, folks, chatting about our reigning hummingbird fighting champ, Vincent the Violet Vengeance, going head-to-head with newcomer Zippy the Zinnia Zapper. Vincent is fast, but Zippy, she's incredibly fast, right?
Oh, Brandy, speed is key here. These hummingbirds are flying up and down the floral arena at an eye-popping rate. But how exactly are they able to move like that?
They are indeed flying out there, Paige. Hummingbird wings can move over 100 times in a second.
Hold on. In 1 second?
1 second.
A way to think about how fast that really is to think about how fast you can blink in a second, which maybe if you're really fast, you can blink, 2-3 times in 1 second? It's maybe one of the fastest things that we are capable of doing.
Okay, I'm trying to blink as fast as I can. Okay, I think I got 4 in a second.
I got 3! Hummingbirds move so quickly that in order for the team at the Burke to study them, they need to use cameras and playback encounters really slow.
They are living a really high-paced lifestyle.
Alejandro Rico Guevara leads the bird team. He's an evolutionary biologist and the curator of birds at the Burke Museum.
Bird curator!
Tools such as high-speed cameras is sort of like entering a new universe and understanding how life occurs in a time scale that is not ours.
Alejandro is locked into understanding all kinds of ways hummingbirds survive and behave, why they're adapting, why some of them, like Vincent, are seeing themselves in a losing position.
Yeah, with Vincent's speed, weaponized beak, it's really baffling how this wonder kid with so much talent is faltering.
I hear that. High-speed cameras are just one way the bird team gets close to hummingbirds. And that's when hummingbirds are alive. But when they're dead, hummingbirds are called specimens. How might you get close to a specimen?
I think I'd use a microscope or maybe a magnifying glass would be good. That way you can see the finer details of the hummingbird.
That's a great guess, and that does happen. But hummingbird specimens are tiny and fragile. Constant handling can be really risky. So the team at the Burke builds 3D copies of their hummingbird specimens for studying.
So these are 3D prints of actual specimens that we have in the collection. And we scan them with a new set of cameras. It's called photogrammetry.
To set up photogrammetry, a hummingbird specimen is situated in the middle of a table with cameras surrounding it. Then they take hundreds and hundreds of photos from every which way. Enough photos to get an accurate image from all angles. Alejandro can make copies 10 times or 100 times the size.
They could make beaks as big as swords.
Exactly! The 3D printed beaks are what they studied to understand how hummingbirds adapt to become better fighters.
So they scanned generations of hummingbird beaks to see the changes up close.
Yes, and even then, they always had to test their theories.
Oh, the team made hypotheses.
Alejandro wanted to know if hummingbird beaks evolved just for fighting or for something else. Maybe hummingbirds have jagged edges in their beaks to poke holes in flowers, to get nectar.
Another hypothesis is that they use them to grab little bugs from crevices, like spiders, the leaves.
Oh, like using a beak like a fork.
Yeah, or maybe they use the edges of their beak like a comb to clean their feathers.
They are gorgeous birds. I kind of believe that hypothesis.
It's a sweet idea, but probably not an accurate hypothesis.
Given the evidence that we have, the more compelling one is that they use them during fights.
And that likely hypothesis may help explain why Vincent is tiring out.
Looking at differences in the structures themselves, you notice that only the males are the ones that have these structures or that they have them more developed.
These beaks with their jagged edges and hooks are not as common with juvenile hummingbirds or female hummingbirds like Zippy.
Females have all the qualities of a good fighter. They can fly super fast, they can accelerate, they can chase other hummingbirds, they can escape from other hummingbirds.
Compared to male hummingbirds, female hummingbirds primarily use their beak to drink from flowers, not to pluck feathers out from other birds.
But what's more important, winning fights or being great at drinking nectar?
Ideally, you would do both very well.
Hummingbirds like Zippy that don't have serrated beaks equip themselves with other tactics. Some female hummingbirds camouflage themselves to avoid conflict altogether. They'll literally adapt to change their feathers to look more vibrant, like a male bird. The theory is they can deter any potential fights just with appearance alone.
Whoa, so the birds take one look at some turquoise feathers and they're like, I gotta stay away. But why is Vincent suddenly having trouble keeping up? The jagged edges on his beak seem like an advantage for him, right?
So it turns out that it's difficult to balance fighting and drinking. Victor's beak adaptations are showing that you can't always have your nectar and drink it too.
The thing is that they seem to be in conflict. When you have these modifications, like these hooks or daggers or serrations, that is not as good for drinking nectar.
These hummingbirds, fierce as they are, have adapted in a way that makes it harder for them to eat.
Oh no.
These bills need to be stronger to be used as swords or as biting devices. That makes them less flexible. And flexibility is really important when they are drinking from flowers.
You can have the most intimidating beak in the league, but if you can't fuel up between matches, you're in major trouble. We saw that play out with Vincent's performance today.
We did. Turns out bringing a nice long spork to the sword fight is benefiting our underdog after all.
And it's not Sue Bird, folks. It is Zippy the Zinnia Zapper.
Zippy!
And after the break, we head to the prep lab at the Burke Museum to see why being faster polishes out those jagged edges.
Hey, did you know this show's actually being made because of the people who support KUOW Public Radio? Yep, we love them. If you want to help out, go to kuow.org/spectacular.
Alrighty, we are coming at you live from the Burke Museum in Seattle. We're here with Madison Mayfield, an assistant collections manager who's building a library of hummingbird specimens and is about to show me some surprising things about our little gladiators.
This is a prep lab where we prepare all of the specimens that go into the research collection. So this is where, we make the dead stuff look pretty.
Oh my God. Madison has to be really careful when she's preparing these tiny, delicate specimens.
It's like doing microsurgery, just like very meticulous. And it just sometimes feels like there's nothing for you to grab onto.
Madison showed me how beak adaptations like Vincent's make eating even harder. Sorry, is that the tongue?
That is the tongue. Yeah, that's the tongue.
Time out. Tongues?
Don't get your feathers ruffled over these top-notch nectar-slurping apparatuses. These tongues are nothing new to the natural world, but there's a whole lot for the Burke team to learn in the lab.
Collecting the tongues is kind of a newer method that we're doing. So in most birds, we don't even really look at the tongue.
These aren't just any kind of tongues. Hummingbird tongues are special. They're so long, they wrap around the skull. So Madison has to carefully unspool each one to preserve them.
So this is an Anna's hummingbird tongue.
Oh my gosh.
And so it kind of just looks like a long piece of string.
Yeah.
So we try to save like the muscles that it's connected to as well as the hyoid bone, because all of that is part of how the tongue moves.
And those weaponized beaks we keep talking about, you know, the one like Vincent has with the serrations and the hooks, they make it much harder for many male hummingbirds to clean their tongues off. And if a hummingbird can't clean its tongue well, then it can't slurp up all the tasty nectar very efficiently.
So that's a mouthful if I've ever heard of one.
Yep. Having multiple skills might win out over those fancy beak adaptations. Update from the garden. Vincent has been spending twice as long at each flower compared to Zippy.
Yeah, in our last round, Vincent's serrated beak is just no match for Zippy's streamlined approach, Brandy. She's working smarter. She's working faster. She's gaining strength as she goes.
The stats just don't lie. Vincent is doing his best to defend these flowers, but oh man, Zippy is leaving him in the dust.
Turns out not all adaptations help you thrive, Brandy.
What about you, Paige? If you were a hummingbird and you got to pick, how might you adapt? Like, what would you do?
Okay, so I'm stuck on the spiders, that they eat spiders, so I think I would adapt my little hummingbird tongue to be longer. It would be like a super long lasso, and I'd pull in spiders, just slurp them right up. I just want to have a whole bunch of snacks all the time to keep my energy high, so I'm going to do a lasso. What about you?
I like that.
Yeah.
I would try to grow a mohawk so far and wide that I could hide in the flowers so no one could see me and I could just eat as much as I wanted.
Yes, okay, I really want to see you in a mohawk. And interesting, both of our adaptations, the tongue lasso and a mohawk, would help us avoid fighting altogether, which honestly works for me. I don't want to fight anybody for flower nectar or lose battles in front of an arena of hummingbirds.
Yeah, no, actually, wait, that is interesting. I mean, you and I may want to choose peaceful adaptations, but to be fair to our gladiators, not every bird has that luxury. They're dealing with a world that's changing faster than ever before.
We are changing the world at such a rapid rate. And when you are an animal in this sort of rapidly changing environment, if your lineage is able to adapt rapidly to different responses, you're going to do really well. And so there's a lot of evolutionary pressure on animals right now to respond to all of the changes that we're making as fast as possible.
Yeah, I can see why Alyssa has so much empathy for these birds. All this fighting just to survive. But you know what I keep thinking?
No, what's on your mind?
We're talking about these incredible adaptations for fighting, but maybe there's something that we can still learn from this about how we might handle conflict.
You know what that sounds like?
No, what?
Maybe that's a perfect big think for this episode.
Big thing!
Big thing question. How do you approach conflict? And what are the best ways to handle it?
Oh, there's a lot to unpack. Like hummingbirds, we all have different strategies we use to find solutions.
And just like hummingbirds, sometimes our adaptations don't work out, even in situations where it can be really important to stand up for yourself.
So much to consider. Let's think about it and come back to discuss after the break.
Hey, have you downloaded your activity book yet? Well, there's some pretty cool stuff in there. There's a beetle room maze, space to write your own stories, some pretty awesome drawing prompts like, what does a sea otter dinner party look like? And there's a super special birdwatching journal, just so you can track all the birds you spot. You can grab your free copy through the link in our show notes. Okay, back to the big think. Before we head to that big think, we've got some truly inspiring news from the Nectar Games. In a last-ditch effort, Vincent and Zippy have been spotted sharing the honeysuckle patch.
Thank goodness there's enough nectar for everybody. This time.
On to something just as sweet. Our big think question. The question's on the table. How do we approach conflict, and what are the best ways to handle it? Let's tackle the first question. Paige, I see some big thought bubbles over your head. Why don't you go first?
Actually, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. When I'm in a tough situation, I tend to get really quiet. And I just think. I don't act right away, don't say anything, I don't want to stir a fight. I'm like frozen, processing what to do. But then I don't get any say on how the fight's resolved. I don't get to speak up. I'm just hiding from the fight, kind of like I'm camouflaged. What about you, Brandy? What's your approach?
I think I can be more like Vincent sometimes.
You're not biting people, are you?
No, not anymore. But I do try to use all of my tools right away, kind of like Vincent leads with his fancy beak.
That sounds pretty useful.
Sometimes. But honestly, every once in a while, I'm so set on fixing things when a problem comes up, and I just jump right in. But I think I'm moving way too fast and too quickly that I can forget to just slow things down and assess the moment.
Huh. So, how do you think you want to handle conflict differently? How do you want to adapt?
Honestly, I'd like to learn to take a breath first. Hover over things a little more before lunging in. A lesson I think Vincent learned a little late, but thankfully not too late. What about you?
Yeah, I think instead of freezing up in a conflict, I want to be brave enough to say what I'm thinking. Like Zippy does. She just owns what she knows and doesn't let a conflict freeze her up.
Yeah, and you're so great at showing up anyway. So that sounds like a really nice adaptation.
Yeah, I think we've both found really nice adaptations. And unlike our hummingbird friends, we have a little more choice in how we want to change.
And we don't have to fight over every flower we find.
I wouldn't mind that lasso tongue, though, for some hard-to-reach popcorn.
And I'm keeping the mohawk.
I'll tweet to that.
Now you're coming up with a saying.
I'm winging it as I go along.
Okay, that'll do it for today. Thanks for thinking big with us. And of course, friends, tell us what kind of cool adaptations you'd rock as a hummingbird or how you solve conflict in the best way. There are all kinds of ways to get in touch in today's show notes. Spectacular Specimens was created by me, Brandy Fullwood,
and me, Paige Browning,
with KUOW Public Radio in Seattle, in collaboration with the Burke Museum of Natural History and Culture, and fact-checking by April Craig. Our theme song was composed by Emily Noakes and mixed by Eric Blood. And hold up, so much of our show music is also composed by Emily Noakes.
I love the music so much.
Oh, yeah, it's so good. If you like our show and want to hear a whole lot more of it, please rate it and review it. It really helps. All right, talk soon.
Bug you later.
Spectacular specimen.